Bienvenidos a esta magnífica sala de actos del Museo Collet, la Casa Pere Company, edificio modernista construido en 1911 por el famoso arquitecto catalán Josep Puig i Cadafalch. Muchas gracias a todos ustedes por estar hoy aquí, acompañándonos en esta magnífica ocasión. Nos agrada constatar el gran interés que nuestro invitado de hoy, Piet du Pisani, ha despertado en los más diversos sectores de la profesión del agua. En nombre de todos los socios de Asersa y mío propio, quiero agradecer a la dirección del museo y al Consell Assessor per al Desenvolupament Sostenible, en la persona de su director, Arnau Queralt, por ofrecernos este magnífico marco de presentación. Quiero igualmente agradecer al área metropolitana de Barcelona, en la persona de Martín Gullón, a Aqualogy, en la persona de Philippe Rouget, y a Veolia, en la persona de José Ángel Legaz, socios protectores de Asersa, por el patrocinio especial que nos han ofrecido para la celebración de este acto. Por último, y con una mención especial, quiero agradecer al señor Piet du Pisani por haber accedido muy gustosamente a compartir con nosotros, aunque solo sea durante este par de horas, toda una vida profesional dedicada a la provisión de un servicio público tan esencial como es el suministro de agua potable de la ciudad de Windhoek. Ese agradecimiento es especialmente más entrañable considerando que estas horas que Piet va a compartir con nosotros forman parte de las vacaciones tan merecidas que él y su esposa están disfrutando estos días en Barcelona. Mi primer contacto con Piet fue durante su presentación del proyecto de reutilización potable directa de agua de Windhoek en la Conferencia Internacional de Reutilización del Agua celebrada en Amberes en 2007. Me impresionó la sencillez y la confianza del proyecto, casi diría que mezcladas con una sensación de estar rompiendo la heterodoxia del abastecimiento de agua. Fue durante la presentación técnica del proyecto en la Conferencia Internacional de Reutilización del Agua que celebramos aquí en Barcelona en septiembre de 2011, cuando la reutilización potable directa del agua en Windhoek apareció ante los ojos de los especialistas del mundo entero como un ejemplo ilustrativo de lo que el futuro nos depara a muchos de nosotros. La solidez y el prestigio del proyecto de Windhoek, junto con el atractivo de un país impresionante y acogedor, fueron suficientes para merecer la organización de la siguiente conferencia internacional en Windhoek, en octubre de 2013. Fue un verdadero privilegio poder asistir, tengo el certificado, a tan magnífica conferencia organizada por Piet y sus colaboradores, de visitar todos los componentes del proyecto de reutilización potable directa de Windhoek, de disfrutar de la impresionante belleza y de la calurosa acogida de las gentes de Namibia y de compartir la compañía de Piet, su familia y sus colaboradores. Imagino que cuando contemplen el paisaje tan árido que este bello país que es Namibia, pensarán casi inconscientemente que esas condiciones están muy lejos de las propias de nuestra latitud y por tanto que pueda parecerles inimaginable que debamos plantearnos en el futuro soluciones tan extremas y tan inusuales desde nuestro punto de vista tradicional de protección de la salud pública. Y eso es aún más cierto en un momento en que estamos celebrando el 6º año consecutivo de abundancia de lluvia y de nieve. Pero permítanme recordarles que nuestro propio historial climático también incluye como naturales periodos de sequía que pueden durar varios años consecutivos, como ocurrió en 2008 y 2009. Otra zona del mundo, calificada de clima mediterráneo como es California, está viviendo su 4º año consecutivo de sequía, con lo que ello comporta de enormes tensiones hídricas, sociales, laborales y económicas. Desde la Asociación Española de Reutilización Sostenible del Agua creemos que la valoración serena y detallada de proyectos de reutilización potable directa del agua como el de Windhoek debería ser una fuente de inspiración para que cristalice la concertación entre administraciones y entidades dedicadas a la gestión del agua, que nos permita dotarnos de nuevas estrategias de gestión integrada y especialmente de las que son capaces de aportar una mayor autosuficiencia con recursos locales que ahora en muchos casos vertemos al mar. Disponemos de instalaciones técnicas emblemáticas. Tenemos el saber hacer para explotarlas y contamos con la capacidad de evaluación científica y reglamentaria suficientes para asegurar la producción de un agua de calidad igual o superior a la mejor agua potable disponible en estos momentos. Cabría, por tanto, hacer un esfuerzo de anticipación, de preparación, para permitir que la gestión integrada de esos nuevos recursos, antes de que volvamos a experimentar situaciones de extrema tensión como las que vivimos aquí en Cataluña y particularmente en Barcelona en 2008 y 2009. Somos plenamente conscientes de que la necesidad ha sido un factor determinante de proyectos tan innovadores como este. Nuestros colegas californianos incluso enfatizan la conjunción de la necesidad y la oportunidad. El artículo del New York Times del pasado viernes se hace eco de la situación de búsqueda desesperada de agua en este momento en California y muy especialmente de los factores psicológicos que gobiernan la decisión de ciudadanos y reguladores ante la reutilización directa. Achacan de una parte al colectivo industrial, lo que ellos llaman la industria del agua, de no haber sabido proyectar, comercializar una marca de calidad, pero también resumen las dificultades que tiene el público, al menos una parte de la población, en aceptar. Yo he titulado el artículo que aparece en el boletín de noticias de ASESA de esta mañana como "La necesidad de agua clarifica la visión". Suele ser lo contrario. ASESA quiere facilitar todo este proceso, estimulando la concertación, la experimentación y la participación. Como bien se suele decir en estos casos, no queremos que se nos reproche de que no nos hemos lanzado a la piscina. Creo que nunca, como en esta ocasión, se podrá justificar que no fue así, a juzgar por el recinto que nos acoge. ¿Se fija en el decorado de piscina que nos rodea? Estamos plenamente dentro de la piscina. Para terminar, mi agradecimiento de nuevo a todos ustedes, a los gestores de este magnífico centro, a los socios patrocinadores y muy especialmente a nuestro conferenciante invitado, el señor Piet du Pisani. Disfruten de su presentación y preparen sus consultas para el posterior debate sobre el proyecto de reutilización potable directa de agua de Windhoek. Muchas gracias.
Buenos días, señoras y señoras. That is my Spanish. First of all, let me apologize for looking like this. Raphael told me it was a few friends who wanted to hear the story of Windhoek, so I didn't know that we would have people with ties. But please forgive me for looking like this, but I'm on holiday. Today I'd like to share with you a little bit of history and some future of direct potable water reuse in Windhoek. Until today, Windhoek is still really the only place in the world where direct potable reclamation is practiced on a big commercial scale. As we speak here, at least 25% of the water in the system is water that 4 days earlier was raw sewage. So if we talk about Singapore, Singapore is the well-known example of water reuse. They aim at 1.9%, and it's not direct. It's after going into an open reservoir and being treated again. There are some new developments in the world, like Big Springs, Texas, which is very close to what we are doing ourselves in Windhoek. But let me start at the beginning. As Raphael has said, my name is Piet du Pisani. I'm from Windhoek. My biggest achievement in life is that I'm now retired and a grandfather. So, and still married to the same wife who is here with us today. On 24 November 1968, this was the caption of the major daily newspaper in Windhoek, which said, Windhoek drinks sewage water, it's a purified world first. Now, if I don't know whether you can read it at the bottom, but on the day the mayor said that it was an achievement equal in significance to the first heart transplant that was done in 1967 in Cape Town on a patient called Mr. Louis Waskanski. Now, Mr. Waskanski later died after 17 days, and today, almost 60 years later, we are still reclaiming water directly in Windhoek. That brings us to the question, why would anyone want to drink wastewater? I mean, is there no better option than that? And the second question, if it's so good, why doesn't anybody else do it? Why is it still only ourselves who are doing it in a major way? Some of the probable reasons that I could offer is, what will you do if there are no alternatives? And like our conference in Windhoek said, that we think that wastewater is the blue resource of the future. The scope of the presentation will look somewhat like this. I'll just touch on a few of the things that we do in Windhoek as standard practice. And the main reason, which I will just now explain, is that there is no other option. This is a picture of drilling for water in the Namib desert. Now, I had to confess to Raphael earlier this morning that this is not typically for Namibia, but I think it creates a good image of what the country looks like. We have, I'll show later, we've got a number of deserts in Namibia. This photo was taken of the Fish River on the 26th of the 4th of 2013. And as you can see, that is what the river normally looks like. And the only reason that there is water in the river is because of leakage from the Hardap Dam, which is just upstream of this point. So under normal circumstances, this river has no water. The same bridge that this photo was taken of looked like this in 2005. So our water supply, which is rain-fed, is very variable, as you can see. If we look at Namibia, Namibia is a large country. It is 825,000 square meters. It's got a population of only 2.1 million people, which is probably the main saving grace of the country, that we are so few. The average rainfall of the country is 250 millimeters. That ranges from around about 700 in the northeast to around about 15 in the southeast and the southwest. The average evaporation in the country is 3,700 millimeters per annum. You compare that to the precipitation, and Windhoek is the capital city of this country. In 1990, at independence from South Africa, the population of Windhoek was 140,000 people. Today, it is 25 years later, it is 420,000. It's a threefold increase, which is rather severe. Windhoek is responsible for at least 30% of national GDP, and our rainfall situation looks a little bit better than that of the country at 360 per year, and an annual evaporation of only 3,400 millimeters. If one looks at the map of Africa, most of you would know where Namibia is, but it is this, we call it the smile on the face of Africa. And what you can see, these are all the perennial rivers in Africa. And what you can see is that none of those occur within the boundaries of Namibia. Only on the very northern boundary and on the very southern boundary, but on the interior there are no perennial rivers. So from Windhoek, the closest perennial river is 750 kilometers away. The distance to the sea, to the coast, is 360 kilometers, and the elevation above mean sea level is 1,700 meters. So it doesn't really make it easy to bring water from the coast. There are groundwater resources, but they are limited. the city is completely almost reliable on ephemeral surface water. Now, an ephemeral river, you probably know, but it's a river that runs just after a rainfall event, and then after 3 or 4 days it stops again, and it is dry for the rest of the time. So we are totally dependent on that. The country looks like this, and you can see that Windhoek is situated almost spot in the middle of Namibia. We've got the Namib Desert covering the whole of the Atlantic coast, which is a cold water coast, forming a desert. And on the eastern side, we've got the Kalahari Desert, which we share with Botswana and South Africa. The closest perennial river would be up to Rundu, which is 750 kilometers, and the country is currently working on the proposal to bring water from that river. It's not as easy as it is said, because it feeds the Okavango swamps, which is a Ramsar site, and which is a very sensitive site, and taking water out of this river, although it's a huge river, it's a very slow flowing river, very flat gradients, and if you take more than about 12 cumecs out of it, you would probably stop water from reaching the Okavango. To look into the picture a little bit further, of 100% of rainfall that falls on Namibian soil, 83% is lost to evaporation, almost immediately. 14% is lost through evapotranspiration, 1% recharges the groundwater, and 2% forms runoff into our ephemeral rivers. So you can see it's a very low efficiency system. If we look at Windhoek and the history of water supply in Windhoek, the settlement first occurred at Windhoek because there were springs, hot springs, and that happened around about 1840. In 1911, the number of people had increased to the extent that with the number of wells that were dug with hand-dug wells, that the water level had dropped so much that they had to start drilling for water. And in 1911, the first water well, drilled water well, was put into practice by the municipality of Windhoek then. In 1933, the Avis Dam was built just east of the dam, a small dam with a capacity of 2.4 million cubic meters, but that dam was built somehow in a rain shadow, and it was actually dry for most of its life. It didn't really add much to the water supply of Windhoek. Today, the water in the dam is used for recreational purposes only. The first mention that I could find in documentation at the Windhoek city about reuse was in 1954. Which is a long time ago to think of that already, but it was then thought of for the power station. But in 57 there was a severe crisis with water, and the aquifer, which was the mainstay of water supply, was overused by 57%. It was found that water level drops of up to 50 meters occurred over 8 weeks so the aquifer basically failed. So in 1958, the Goreangab Dam and plant, the dam was built with a treatment plant next to it, and the capacity of the dam was 3.4 million cubic meters. But even though this dam was there, groundwater still remained to be the main source of supply. So potable reclamation, in early 1960, you have to remember that the Goreangab Dam was built in 58. In early 60s, they started with pilot plants to try and see whether it was possible to reclaim water from sewage, and by 68, the scientists were confident that water could be produced which was safe and fit to drink, and the Goreangab Dam plant was converted into 2 trains one train treating water from the Goriangap Dam, and the other train treating water directly from the Gamam sewage plant. Now, incidentally, the whole of Windhoek lies in the catchment of this dam. And this dam is today so polluted that you can almost walk on it, but we cannot treat the water in the new high-tech plant. The water from the sewage plant is better. So it maybe was a good choice to go for reclamation. The new plant had an initial capacity of 4,300 cubic meters per day, and between 69 and 92 there were 4 major process upgrades, and in 1996 the ultimate capacity of this plant was 7,500 cubic meters. At the time, planning was afoot to increase the capacity of this plant, but during the drought of 96 it was just decided to keep this plant running and to build a complete new plant right next to the old plant. At that stage, the city consumption was around about 60,000 cubic meters per day. But as I said, the drought of 96, incidentally, the city had less than 6 weeks worth of water when the first rain came. So that was cutting it the closest to date. Some other initiatives that took place during this time is that the government built 3 dams on ephemeral rivers. They are 70 kilometers, 100 kilometers, and 200 kilometers away from the city. So between 78 and 93, these 3 dams were built, and they had a combined 95th percentile safe yield of 17 million cubic meters. Now, just as a benchmark, the city only currently uses 26 million cubic meters per day, and these dams are not only for Windhoek, they have to supply the central areas. So you can see that the government supply system is incapable of supplying Windhoek with water, let alone the whole of the central areas. So in 1995, the Eastern National Water Carrier was added, which brings water from 525 kilometers away from the karst area in the north. And just by way of mention, since between 1990 and 2000, there were only 3 seasons with above average inflow, and major droughts also occurred in 86, 91 and 96. Just to try and explain a little bit the supply situation, Windhoek is situated right here. The Von Bach Dam at Okahanya is the one that is 70 kilometers, that's the main dam. The Swakopmund Dam is around here, and the water is pumped to Von Bach, the treatment plant, and then pumped to Windhoek. And the Omataku Dam is over there with which is about 200 kilometers away. The thing about Omataku Dam is it's a very flat dam and a very large surface area. So as soon as it is deemed that the rainy season is over, all water that is in the Omataku Dam is pumped over into the Von Bach Dam if there's any room in this dam, and there normally is. Because of the evaporation. Otherwise, we lose on average more to evaporation from these dams than what we actually consume from the dams. The red line shows the open canal that brings water from Grootfontein down to Omataku, to the Omataku Dam, from where it is then pumped. It's a gravity canal, and the future is to bring water from Rundu all the way down to Grootfontein. I just want to mention that currently the process of looking at this has taken a decision to go around about another 100 kilometers downstream before taking water, because another river from Angola joins at that point. So that would make it a little safer to bring water from there. So that brings us, I'm just putting the background to you, but that brings us to the decision to go for extended reclamation after the drought of 1996. A firm decision was taken to extend the reclaimed percentage of water to 35%. And for that purpose, we built the new Windhoek plant, which was completed in 2002. And it's currently running at around about 16 megaliters per day. And the main reason for that is that the use of ozone is creating bromides, which we cannot find the origin of and which we have not found a suitable solution for. So that's why we're only running at 16,000 cubic meters a day, but that constitutes on average about 25% of the potable supply. We entered into a 20-year quality-based O&M contract, and I'm glad to see or to hear that one of the partners running our plant, Veolia, is represented here today. We have a consortium of Veolia, Wabak from Austria, and Berlin Water International from Germany, who formed a consortium and who is running this plant on a 20-year O&M contract. And just visiting the partners during the past week, it's difficult to think, but that contract ends in 2021. It was a 20-year contract, and it's almost coming to an end. And in Windhoek, I can say without a shadow of the doubt that wastewater is the one resource that we don't have to worry about. It is always there. This is the schedule of the plant. We use what we call the multiple barrier approach, and we don't have a pure membrane plant, but a multiple barrier plant. We start off with mixing of the two sources, which we don't do anymore because of the poor quality of the Windhoek dam. But we are able to dose PAC, but we don't under normal circumstances. And we also add pre-ozone to break down long chain organics, and then we add ferric chloride, which is our main coagulant, and we add a lot of ferric, and that's a part of the major cost. That is for pH correction, which we don't normally have to do. We also have the possibility to add polys, which we've tried a lot of, but none of them have really shown to make any big difference. The next step is the DAF, which we regard as the heart of the process. After DAF, we add sodium hydroxide and potassium permanganate to prime the iron and manganese for precipitation on the next stage, which is your sand filters. Then the next step is ozone. We dose up to 6 milligrams per liter. We have a CT product of 20, which we have to maintain, and that is mainly done to take care of any kind of pathogen which is there, and especially to break down your organics for the next step. But after ozone, you have to destroy your ozone before going onto your biological step. Otherwise, the ozone would destroy your biology. So we add hydrogen peroxide. Sorry, I'm running out of English. I'll switch over to Spanish just now. And then we have for the biological activated carbon, then we have our granular activated carbon, 2 steps of carbon, and we have the possibility to switch. Those are in 2 beds adjacent to one another. No, sorry, I'm wrong. The GAC, we operate in primary and secondary, and we have the possibility to switch the flow from the one to the other. So if the primary gets saturated, we switch to the secondary, to use that as primary, replace the previous primary, and use that then as a secondary. So that's a way to save, because carbon is the most expensive part of the process that we use. We have to replace this carbon between 3 and 4 months every time, and that adds a lot to the cost of the water. After that, we have light chlorination before the ultrafiltration membranes. Then we add chlorine and sodium hydroxide for just to stabilize the water, and then it goes to a pump station where it is blended with water from the bulk supplier, which is called NAM water, and in that we have this thing is running away with me. With NAM water, we have 2 blending ratios. We have one blending ratio that we use for artificial injection into the aquifer, and we have one blending ratio for the network. And the whole city gets the same water. Regardless of where you are, you get a blend of water. The one is blended in 1 to 3 and the other is blended in 1 to 4. That's a picture of the plant. Now, Raphael, who's been to Windhoek, knows that it doesn't always look like this, but you can see that it is a pretty arid environment, and that is what the plant looks like. And this is basically a short history of wastewater in Windhoek. On day 1, you have raw influent at the Gamam's wastewater plant, and this is on day 1 still, and day 3 when it leaves the wastewater treatment plant and it enters the high-tech treatment plant, and that is on day 4 when it leaves the plant and is reintroduced into the system without an intermediate water body. And that's the big problem between, or not a problem, but the big difference between direct and indirect recycling, is there's no intermediate water body that the water is blended with. It goes by pipe and is blended straight into the Windhoek distribution system. Some quality slides that I've brought along, these belong to a colleague of mine who is also now retired. I just want to show to you how it is, how the organic carbon is one of the things, especially those deemed to be from human origin, that is taken care of in a big way. And you can see the influent coming in and how it is reduced over the steps of the Goreanga plant until the final water, where you can see that you have on your biodegradable organic carbon that you are at 0 at that point in time. Your AOC is not taken care of in the same way. And then you have the Von Bach water, which is from the government or the state water supplier, which is blended with our water. And then you have the pump station where it is blended, what your organic carbon looks like, and these are in the network. So you can see that we are within our guidelines that we need to be. I mentioned earlier that we do have a problem with bromates. You can see over here that the minute that on the influent side there's not much of a problem, but the minute that you start dosing ozone, these bromates just shoot right up, and it is very difficult to take care of them. And that's one of the reasons why we are unable to run the plant at full capacity. So in future, which I'll share a little bit later, we are looking at introducing an RO stage. Not only for that, but because of the high level of recycling in Windhoek, we are seeing a steady incline in the TDS of the water. At this stage, the rise in TDS is much faster than what was predicted. and because you use the same water over and over again, and also the water coming in from the state water company, which was normally after the rainy season coming in at a TDS of around 140, maybe 200 on the outside in TDS, is now coming in approaching 500. Now we use that water to blend down the reclaimed water from around about 1,000 to be under 500, and so we have a problem that we will have to address pretty soon. But RO will of course also take care of this problem. Some of the EDC results, I have to already say now that I am not able to take any questions on this. This belongs to Jürgen Menger. I am not a chemist, and I can only tell that we do not have the capacity to test for EDCs and for all these new personal products, personal care products and all of that. We send samples to Veolia in France, where they are analyzed, I think 3 or 4 times a year, and we have as yet not found any exceeding of the applicable values. But for those of you who understand what is on there, I hope that you do. Just a few words on climate change. On the way here, Raphael told me, when I was here last time was in 2011, during the EVA conference, and at that stage there was almost no water in the river, that the treatment plant that we visited, and everybody was worried. And since then, there's been so much rain that you don't have any problem. And now you are well away. I can just mention to you that in Windhoek, I told you that our average long-term rainfall is 360 millimeters per annum. From the period after 97 to around 2012, we had in Windhoek an average of 586 millimeters of rain. That's almost double, or 1.5 times our annual average. And nobody was worried about water. I mean, there was just enough water. For the first time in 30 years, they opened the sluices of the Von Bach Dam. The last time that the Von Bach Dam was full was in 1976. So in 2006, they had the opportunity to open the sluices just a slight little bit to see whether they were still working, because they have been standing for 30 years. And so, but then all of a sudden, for 12 years, we had so much rain. We had over 1,000 millimeters of rain in Windhoek in 1 year. And we thought, I mean, why do we even need a department for water? I mean, you just open the tap, it's there. And now we had 3 dry seasons. As we speak now, the Von Bach Dam is at 34%. If we don't have inflow end of this year, the dam will be empty in June next year. So that is the way that we are reliant on rainfall. So if I can say anything about your current situation, it can change. It can change very rapidly. And climate change, people are against it and for it. We don't know what's happening about it, but something is happening. In Namibia, we have very little in terms of climate change strategies. And if I show you the model now, you will see that it says at the bottom here that a slight change in temperature, they say a change of between 2 and 3 degrees can have a change of between 10 and 20% in precipitation. Now if you look at these, you'll see that Namibia is situated here in this area, and in all cases it is in the bad side of the scale. If you look here at precipitation response, you'll see that we are, the fortunate thing is that this bad picture is in our winter period when we don't have any rain anyhow. So if you decrease from north, you're not very much worse off. But you can see that it is nowhere is there a positive influence for us. So we have to be on alert every day. If you look at this is the inflow into the Von Bach reservoir, which is our main reservoir. You can see there was a steady decline. These are 10-year means, steady decline, and then we had 2 periods of incline, and then this was that wet period that I was telling you about, starting around about 2000. You could see that how it had changed, and now all of a sudden, last year and this year, we had zero, zero inflow into any of the 3 dams, which is a fairly serious situation. Now, what is the future of reclamation? Currently, the Gammams reclamation, Gammams wastewater treatment plant, which is the feed source for the Goreangab reclamation plant, has it has a capacity of 28,000 cubic meters per day. On average, we are now running at 38,000 cubic meters per day. At times, the wet peaks go over 55,000 cubic meters per day, compared to a stretched capacity of 28. What you will see there is that the only reason why we haven't done anything is that we don't have the money to do so. We're currently busy with it. It will cost us around about 430 million Namibian dollars, which is about 40 million euros, which is money that we don't have. So what we are planning now is a parallel MBR train next to the old Gammams train, which will be reduced to 25, where it can run adequately, and then add a new 30 megaliter per day train. Yeah, we'll stick to the multiple barrier approach. What we do have is that the existing Goreangab plant has space constraints, and we cannot do much in terms of enlarging it. It was not built with a view of enlarging it, and that was a mistake. But it's now too late to worry about that. So the capacity upgrade at Gammams has become very urgent, and the new 2-train approach that I've mentioned. So the Gammams plant will be upgraded with an MBR plant with either microfiltration or ultrafiltration. And these 2 steps, there's a spelling mistake there. The microfiltration or the ultrafiltration will replace the coagulation, DAF and sand filter part of the reclamation process. And then we will retain, or that is the current plan, to retain the ozone, the BAC and GAC as additional safety barriers for organics removal. And then the plan is to add to that, but not at Goreangab, to do this at the wastewater treatment plant, to add to that an RO step to control TDS and bromates. And then this water will then be blended with the water from Goreangab to take care of the TDS problem. So that is the process, which is also the process which is propagated by Asano and others. Just a few other things that we do because water is something of great value in Namibia. We have water demand management as a permanent feature in our daily life. We have a permanent rising block tariff, and I've put the euro values behind. Now, this is not for wastewater treatment. This is the cost of water. So if you buy fresh water from the municipality through your meter, that is what you are paying for it. And all water supply is metered. We have things like private pool covers that are mandatory. The use of low water use plumbing is mandatory. You're not allowed to have automatic flushing urinals and stuff in your hotels. We have garden watering hours. The high evaporation periods between 10 and 4, and then we don't allow garden watering during those times. At some times we have hosepipe bans, and we have taken a decision not to allow any further wet industry in Windhoek. This is just a slide showing the effect of water demand management. If one has just a quick look on the population increase, and you see the water use at the time of '96 when it was introduced, you'll see that those were the high, medium and low projections that were made, and this is where we are actually. And a very high percentage of that is due to the fact of water demand management. For the purpose, we also promote this type of garden, which we think is relevant for a city like Windhoek. Some of the policies that we've adopted is that we'll have no new wet industry in Windhoek. We've put a ban on that. Any industry using more than 100 cubic meters of water per day is not allowed in Windhoek. And Namibia is a country where direct foreign investment is very important, but our council accepted that investment, if it is in wet industry, shall not be in Windhoek. It's limited, as I said, to 10 cubic meters per hectare per day, or with a maximum of 100 cubic meters per day. Even if it produces industrial effluent, it's not allowed, and the decision was taken in April 2013 that we will target dry industry for Windhoek. We also have a second pipeline system where we use the old Gurianga plant at around 5,000 cubic meters per day. We have 75 kilometers of second pipeline versus 1,800 on the freshwater pipeline. That replaced around about 6% of our potable supply. The treatment is there, and this allows us to do unrestricted irrigation on landscaping, sports fields and parks. The Uyam's industrial wastewater plant was upgraded in 2014. The 50-year-old pond system was replaced with a 5.2 megaliter MBR plant, which incidentally is also was built on a boot contract with Wabak and once again Veolia. The final effluent of this is destined for a new golf course development, which we said could only develop if they use this water, and they will buy this water. Just by way of indication, the old pond system, people paid between $1 Namibian and $6 Namibian for wastewater treatment, industrial wastewater treatment. And with this new plant, the cost of treatment is 27 Namibian dollars per cubic meter. So it's a big issue. There was almost a riot, and the beer company is the hardest hit. So we can expect a rise in beer prices in Windhoek. This is just the signboard which is still up at the plant. I was very glad that this plant was actually, I tried very hard to have this plant built, but with a municipality that gets no government support. We have to render our services at cost or even below cost, but we get no government support. So I really tried very hard to have this plant built, and it was actually inaugurated in November, which was the same month that I went on retirement. So it was, I was very glad about that. This is just a picture of the plant. That is part of the MBR. And this is currently the water is used for this roll-on lawn company, which used to use the water from the old ponds. And because we have these semi-purified irrigation, the city is able to have even gardens. And you can see this is in the center of the city, and if you compare that with the the hills. This is in winter time when the hills look like that. You can see that it's even possible to have a pretty city with some gardens and some sports facilities which are all under semi-purified irrigation. And my personal favorite place is the 18th hole at the Windhoek Country Club, which incidentally also gets semi-purified water in a country that otherwise is very dry. Just to show you a little bit about the options that we are looking at, the Windhoek aquifer recharge option for augmenting water to the city is 340 million. This slide is a little outdated. It was now at 400 million. Then we have the Tsumeb karst area, which is the 500 kilometers away, which is substantially more. And then the Okavango scheme, which stands at $842 million. If I can just, by way of comparison, show that we currently they have just increased the pipeline between Windhoek and Okahania at a cost of 225 million Namibian dollars. That translated into a direct price increase in the bulk water price to Windhoek of 75% over 3 years. Compounded, that gives you 96% increase in bulk water tariff over 3 years. I don't know that that is possible in a country like this, but that is possible in a country like that. If that's 225,000 and it's got to be financed from water revenue, you can think what would happen if that would come onto the water, onto the price of water. Artificial recharge, I'll just skim through this. Windhoek was established there because we had underground water. There's a huge amount of underground water. It's calculated to be in the thousands of millions of cubic meters. But the downside is that the average natural recharge is only 1.73 million cubic meters per year. So for more than 50 years, this aquifer had been mined, and it was calculated that it was mined by about 22 million cubic meters. So with the high evaporation and the space in the aquifer, a decision was taken that we would take the water out of the dams where it just evaporates and store it underground in the aquifer where there was space available for it. So we drilled some deep abstraction holes up to 470 meters deep. For us, that is pretty deep and very expensive, but that is what we are doing. And we've got currently 14 injection holes at 6 injection stations. The idea is that the 2000 water level, the bulk of the aquifer sits under the Awas mountains to the south of the city, and it moves in this direction very, very slowly. But on the northern side of the city, there's what is called an amphibolite belt, which cuts directly across the face of this aquifer, and it basically stops the water from leaving the system. So what we want to do is to inject water in this group of boreholes, and in that group of boreholes to try and lift this current water level again, and the flowing of springs would be an indication that we are too high. But we will monitor it. We cannot come too close to the surface because of the development. That's just a typical station. Inside of such a station, we do granular activated carbon and filtration, and we do chlorination to stop from putting organic material down into the aquifer, which would cause us later problems. That's just a sketch of what the different sources looks like. I think this one is better, where you can see in 2005 we relied for 74% of our water from natural resources. We aim to, at 2019, to only rely on round about 10% of water from natural sources. So even if we have a drought, we will have water from the aquifer, so we will be less dependent on water from natural sources. And that's it. I think we can just skip the video and then we are on time.
Tenemos ahora un tiempo suficiente para atender las cuestiones, las dudas, las consultas que le quieran presentar.
Sí, buenos días. Bien, gracias por la presentación, que es un tema que, como ya han dicho aquí, nos interesa muchísimo. Lo que me quería, bueno, no sé si he entendido bien, he entendido que la inyección de agua en el acuífero que se hace proviene de agua de la presa, más agua residual que pasa después todo este proceso que nos ha demostrado. Y quería preguntar, asegurar que era así, que había una mezcla antes de este proceso de regeneración, antes de inyectar en acuífero, y después si puede explicar un poco la distancia desde donde se inyecta hasta los puntos de donde se coge agua de estos acuíferos. Muchas gracias.
Yes, indeed. The water that we are blending is water from the dam, which is a drinking water quality, and water from reclamation, which is also drinking water quality. We have the problem that the water from the reclamation plant, the TDS is too high, and the water from the dam, the dissolved organic carbon compounds are too high. So we actually beneficially blend the two because the water that we produce has almost zero dissolved organic carbon, and the water from the dam has low TDS. I've also mentioned lately that the TDS in the dam water is rising, so the process is under a little bit of threat. But yes, we don't inject pure reclaimed water or pure dam water. But it's not raw dam water, it's treated dam water.
Muchas gracias. La siguiente pregunta. Sí, Philip.
It's just a question about the test of this water. Do you have people is drinking this water? It's test and smell very well. What about the quality on these aspects?
On the reclamation plant, right at the beginning, at the design stage, the plant was designed to guarantee certain quality parameters. We went into the market at the time in the late 90s. There weren't any published standards or guidelines for drinking water from wastewater. So we took from EU, from US EPA, from the South African drinking water standards, from the Namibian, and from whatever standards we could find. We looked for the strictest standards, and we adopted those as the standards for Goreangap. And where there were none, we put in something. We had almost a year of pilot testing before we actually started building the new plant and designing the new plant. So yes, there's a very, very strict quality regime. As a matter of fact, the operator loses a percentage of his income, or let me go a little bit further back. We have got two quality parameters. We've got a target parameter and an absolute parameter. Absolute parameter means stop production. If he approaches the absolute, it means stop production and no water may be put into the system. If he exceeds a target parameter, which is still regarded as safe, but he gets penalized financially. So and they compound. It is this one times that one times that one times that one. So they actually compound, and he could easily lose 50% of his daily income by not meeting target parameters. We have a very strict monitoring. We monitor places of interest like hospitals, schools. Those are monitored regularly. In the network we have 129 monitoring points. We monitor the reservoirs. So yes, we do a very thorough monitoring. We know in Windhoek that it takes one case of an illness, or worse than that, a death caused and related back to drinking water, to lose all the goodwill that we have built up over 50 years.
Hello. Yes, I understood that you are going to upgrade the plant with membranes, both MBR and reverse osmosis membranes. And I want to ask you if you could explain a bit more the reasons. I understood that bromage is one concern. I don't know if there are other concerns also. And about the increase of the treatment cost that will be associated with this upgrading.
Thank you. Yes, I think maybe I didn't make that very clear. We have two plants. We have the Gammams wastewater treatment plant, which is a normal BNR activated sludge plant, and that is the feed water. From there it goes into a series of eight ponds, just retention ponds. From there they go straight into the Windhoek reclamation plant, which is the one that I showed you the process drain of. Now, what we aim at upgrading is the Gammams wastewater treatment plant. It is currently way over capacity. The average inflow is about 38,000 cubic meters, and the plant is only able to treat 28,000. So we run into problems at times. We have to shut down Windhoek when ammonia spikes come through the wastewater treatment plant. So what we aim at doing is to retain the old wastewater treatment plant, and to downgrade it to 25 megaliters per day, do away with the biofilters and just run a straight ASP plant, and adjacent to that build a totally new wastewater treatment plant inclusive of ASP and MBR, and then at the end of that add the additional steps, and then have that as an independent reclamation plant, and then still feed the water from the 25 megaliter plant into the old Windhoek, and then at the end blend those two sources. Because at the old plant we do have this problem with rising TDS. So if you then have RO type water from this stream and high TDS water, you can blend it down to be within spec. And as to the cost that I referred to, that was for the new Uyams industrial wastewater treatment plant. What I failed to mention initially is what the people who planned reuse in Windhoek many years ago, the foresight that they had was to split the industrial wastewater stream from the domestic wastewater stream. So the water that goes for reclamation is domestic wastewater predominantly. There are a few smaller industries in there, but the major wastewater from the industry goes to a separate plant which is called Uyams, and that is the one that we have upgraded or built a new plant now, and that's where the major cost is. As to cost, the Windhoek reclamation plant water with that advanced process is today cheaper than the water from the bulk water supply. We pay round about 10, 11, I shouldn't mention this because the Viola is here, but we pay about 11 Namibian dollars per cubic meter for the reclaimed water, whereas we pay $14 per cubic meter for dam water treated conventionally. So initially it was much more expensive. Dam water was $6.32 at the time when we started with reclamation with the new plant. So it was much more expensive, but due to the good contract that we have and the open book system on which we work, the price of raw water has actually surpassed the price of reclaimed water.
What was the original reclamation treatment back in the late 60s when there were no membranes, for instance? And how did you treat the wastewater to drinking quality at that time? And also now when you have RO, what is the plan to do with the brine?
Okay, as I mentioned, the old plant was upgraded 4 times between 1969 and 1992. Initially, in the first days, the main things were to get rid of soaps and foams and that type of thing. Then it grew with the need for the treatment of the water. It ended up to have the same process train than this one, but it ended with carbon treatment and then breakpoint chlorination. It didn't have and of course it didn't have ozone. So it had coagulation and sedimentation, then sand filtration, and 2 steps of carbon and breakpoint chlorination. I think that was the complete plant. Yeah. So the rest of the question? The brine, the reason why we have not gone for RO yet is because of the brine. So we are an inland situation, 360 kilometers from the coast. We had a recent very unpleasant experience when a giant Malaysian textile factory came and settled themselves to be the saviors of Namibia, and they settled in Windhoek. And as you know, textile wastewater is very, very high in salinity. And there was absolutely no way that we could treat it. And so they said, no, don't worry, we'll treat it ourselves. So we fought them all the way, but the politicians won, and they brought the plant to Windhoek. It was 1,000 million Namibian dollars. It was, how much is that it's 100 million euro, roundabout. So it was a big project, but they ended up irrigating the wastewater just into the open veld. And fortunately, they have left down. But so we do not yet have an answer for the brine. The only way that we would probably be able to deal with it is evaporation, but then you need large areas. Yeah.
Déjenme que tome la palabra, porque creo que hay, en el fondo de las mentes de muchos de ustedes, creo que anida la inquietud de saber cómo la sociedad namibia, en particular la sociedad de Windhoek, llegó a acordar, a ponerse de acuerdo las autoridades de salud pública, las autoridades municipales, que entiendo que son las promotoras. Incluso ha comentado el señor Pisani que no hay ayudas o subvenciones del gobierno del país, de forma que parece que la iniciativa es municipal, pero sin duda han de haber establecido acuerdos dinámicos con las autoridades de salud pública y con el público, con la participación pública de conocer lo que se está haciendo.
Thank you, Rafael. I mentioned to Rafael earlier this morning that in Windhoek it is really currently a non-issue. I became involved in Windhoek water in 1998, and at that time already it was just one of those things. I mean, you open your I think the average person in Barcelona maybe opens the tap and doesn't really think where this water has originated from. And the same thing happens in Windhoek. People just, I mean, it was always an embarrassment for me that when we had council meetings, the city council had meetings, that they drank bottled water. And that sent the message that the council don't trust their own water. I mean, they want the people to drink it, but they don't trust it. So we arranged for Windhoek, which is the reclamation company, to bring bottles of Windhoek water. So we put this water on the table so that people could see that we trust our own product. Probably the main possibility was because in 1969, I think the general public, if I can be frank, was probably less informed about issues such as water and safety of water, and I think there were also a lot less public discussion on it. People with white coats and thick glasses were generally trusted. They were scientists and they knew how to do it, and we trusted them. And I think I presume that is probably how they managed. But they had a big campaign taking the people along. They invited people to come to the plant when it was being constructed. That is probably how they managed. But they had a big campaign taking the people along. They invited people to come to the plant when it was being constructed. And they had tasting sessions where the mayor would be drinking the water. I went to the archives. And found newspaper articles, the one that I showed you this morning, about the time when this plant was opened. And people were, 1969, I wonder if it was 100,000 people. Everybody knew one another. And today in Windhoek, there's a certain amount of pride. And I am proud to be from Windhoek because of this fact. That we are still the only people in the world who do it. And what I have to say is that the only epidemiological study that was done in 1974. That was the last one that was done, and it was found then, but that was only 5 years after the introduction of reclaimed water. We tried again later on, but it was just too difficult. Windhoek has a migrant population. In Africa it works like this, that people from the rural areas, they have a house in the rural area. So they spend the month in Windhoek, they work, they get paid, at the end of the month they go to the rural area, to their house in the sticks. And so it was very difficult to have a very good sample of people who you could say, these ones are the ones that drink only this water. So we have not had a new epidemiological study, but in terms of the medical profile of Windhoek, it doesn't differ from any of the towns in Namibia, and we are the only city that drinks reclaimed water. So we have full faith in the process, and I said to Raphael this morning, and there are a number of quotes that I've heard in my time which have really made sense to me, and the one is from Ron Linsky. He's an American. I think he is no longer. I think he has departed. But he said a very simple thing. Water is water. Water is H2O. And sometimes there are other stuff in the water, and you just have to take the other stuff out, and you still end up with H2O. So water is water. The guy from South Australia, I've now forgotten his name. It's maybe the reclaimed water that makes me forget. But he said you can change anything wet into drinking water if you filter it through enough money. And that's, I mean, you can produce 100% ultra pure water if you have enough money to do so. And the thing is, what you have to change is here, is between the ears of people. That's the filter that you have to breach with your water if you want to make it. So in Windhoek, there are no things like any abnormalities in birth defects. Most people have children. People still grow beards. I'm not being facetious about it, but for us it's really a non-issue. We believe in the process, and we'll stand by it.
And if I remember well, you have another famous sentence: water should be judged by its quality and not by its history, right?
By the way, Raphael Lucas van Vieren died shortly after the conference. He was one of the pioneers of Windhoek, and he said that water should be judged by its quality, not by its history. And he came to our conference in 2013, and he actually said to Ben van der Merwe when he took him to the airport, he thinks he can die now because he has seen the final product. And he actually got his wish.
Yes, it's very quickly. I just want to know if maybe you say it, but I don't get it. The percentage of the water uses in Namibia. I mean, how much is for population? How much do you spend in irrigation, urban uses, industrial uses? Do you know the percentage of the water that each one they get? For example, 80% irrigation. And if you use regenerated water for irrigation, are you using regenerated water to irrigate fields? Which kind of fields are?
Okay, on the first question, I'm not sure of the percentages. Agriculture is the largest user of water. Namibia is predominantly an agricultural country, and cattle is the major. There's not much crop production there's a few places that has irrigation around the Hardap Dam in the south, and a few other places have rain-fed crop production, but agriculture is the major consumer. And then urban areas, and then the mines. That's more or less but unfortunately I don't have the percentages. But it's a small business. The Namwater, who is the parastatal bulk water supplier, I would say that their total revenue, water revenue, would not be more than 700 million Namibian dollars, which is about 500 million euros. No, not even. About
70.
Say again?
You said 700?
700 million?
By about
It's
10,
about
70.
about 50 million euros.
50.
That is the total water revenue, of which Windhoek pays most of it. And the irrigation, yes, we use semi-purified water, but not from the drinking water plant, from the wastewater treatment plant. They are from the old drinking water plant, which is next to the new one. That has been just upgraded, and we produce the water from there. We irrigate the golf course, rugby fields, soccer fields, the central parks in the city, and all of that.
I understood that currently, well, he entendido que actualmente el 25% del agua es de agua regenerada, pero no he entendido si la mezclan antes de la distribución o en la red. Si todo el mundo tiene la misma calidad del agua en la ciudad.
The water from the reclamation plant is pumped to a pump station in town, and the water from the parastatal water supplier NamWater is gravitated from a reservoir in town into that same pump station, and then it is blended in the pumps. It is blended in two different ratios, and everybody in town gets the same. There is a small difference. The well field, the groundwater is in the southern part of town, and as we speak now, it cannot, the water cannot be moved from south to north in the town. We are busy with a project now to be able to supply the whole town from the well field if that is necessary. So then we will be able to do it, but currently we cannot. So the water can only move from north to south in town. And sometimes when we do use groundwater, we don't, if we have dam water, we don't use groundwater because it's our cheapest water, but it's also the safest. While it's there and the water evaporates in the dams. So sometimes when we do use groundwater, when say NamWater has a problem and they cannot supply us with enough water, we start up the well field or part of the well field, and then that water is introduced directly into some of the reservoirs on the southern side of town. So they get at that stage a different blend of water. But under normal circumstances, the whole town gets the same water, with the exception of the northern industrial area where the beer brewery is situated. And the beer brewery brews according to the German Reinheitsgebot of 1368 or something like that, and they don't use reclaimed water. So that part of town gets only NamWater water, which is of a poorer quality, but it doesn't have reclaimed water.
Perdón, Martín, sí.
Sí, quería ver si nos podía explicar la política de tarifas de precio que paga el usuario final. Si es el mismo precio lo que paga el usuario doméstico, el mismo precio que paga el industrial, y si el precio metro cúbico es igual el primer metro cúbico que el último. Creo que ha explicado algo durante la conferencia, pero así nos podría explicar.
As I've mentioned earlier, we have a water demand management policy in the town, and one of the most successful water demand management measures is price. So your domestic customer has a rising block tariff, and as I've shown there, for the first 6 cubic meters you pay €1, roughly 13 Namibian dollars, and for 6 to 36 you pay 1.5, and if you move above 36 in your monthly consumption, you pay €3 per cubic meter, which is pretty expensive for us. But in saying it is expensive, Windhoek lies in the middle of a desert country. And if you order 1 ton of sand to be delivered to your house, it costs about 3 times or 4 times as much as 1 cubic meter of water delivered to your house. So, which puts a perspective on it. But your industry, they have a fixed price, because it's more expensive than or let me first come back to the block tariff. it is based on NAM water plus 15%. That is the first 6 cubic meters. As we speak now, this last year, when I was still responsible, we did not add the 15%. So it is currently, the first 6 cubic meters is sold for less than the NAM water bulk tariff. Then the next 30 cubic meters is at operational cost recovery. So we do the total cost recovery calculation, and that middle block is sold at operational cost recovery. The penalty tariff is your long-term marginal cost. That is currently 3 euros. And then we also have a basic charge by the size of your meter. If you have a 15 millimeter, 20 millimeter, 25 or whatever size, you pay a basic tariff, and the basic tariff recovers the capital, the cost of capital. So if we build a new reservoir and we borrow the money, the cost of that capital goes into that calculation and it is recovered that way. So it is expensive to waste water in Windhoek.
Pete, just another question. You was talking about grid for reclaimed water. So you sell this water, you have a tariff for reclaimed water?
No, we do not, because we do not sell reclaimed water straight. The ones that I mentioned in bottles, that's a special product that they make for us just for the council meeting. But we have a policy in Windhoek, a policy decision which was taken long ago, which was based on an EPA guideline of 1 ppm of organic carbon from human origin. So we regard the water from the dam as having no organic carbon from human origin, and our target value is 3. So if we then blend 3 plus 2, it gives us the 1. But we normally produce water with a DOC of in the region of highest 1.7.
Una reflexión relacionada con este deseo especial del fabricante de cerveza de no utilizar agua regenerada o mezcla de agua regenerada. Es curioso observar que, tal como nos dice Piet, el agua regenerada es más barata, el agua regenerada, esta de alto nivel, es de mejor calidad, pero supongo que todavía en la mente de esos fabricantes resuenan unas declaraciones que realizó la cerveza Miller en la zona de Los Ángeles hace algunos años, diciendo que no lo haría nunca para no deteriorar la imagen de marca de su cerveza. Pero hasta eso está cambiando, porque en la reciente, hará un año o así, la última reunión plenaria de la Water Reuse Association, la conferencia anual que hicieron en Florida, dedicaron una cena de gala especial en la que tanto las verduras, todo lo que se comió, venía certificado de granjas y de cultivos que se habían utilizado con agua regenerada, y hasta la cerveza y el vino, con nombres y apellidos, estaba cultivado con agua regenerada. De manera que yo creo que esa es otra de las maneras de salir de ese bloqueo mental o psicológico que a veces de forma imprevista surgen. Pero que sepan que ya, no sé si dentro de algún tiempo, será hasta incluso positivo, como igual que Piet se siente orgulloso de vivir en Windhoek y beber agua regenerada, pues habrá cultivadores y habrá fabricantes de algunas de estas bebidas que incluirán en sus documentos que han sido regados, aunque sea riego de soporte o riego de apoyo parcial, con agua regenerada. Abro de nuevo el debate. Si alguno de ustedes tiene alguna pregunta, entiendo que ya se nos hace tiempo. También querría aprovechar para pedirles a los socios patrocinadores, en este caso Veolia, el área metropolitana, Aqualogy y el CATS, si quieren tomar la palabra y hacer algún tipo de de reflexión o de manifestación, encantados.
Bueno, la experiencia en Namibia es una experiencia muy directa. Los que trabajamos en esta industria sabemos que técnicamente la tecnología desde hace años es capaz de producir incluso agua potable para consumo humano. El problema no es técnico, como bien está orientando Rafael. El problema es un problema psicológico, es un problema de comunicación, donde todos los entes que tienen que ver, desde las autoridades sanitarias, es un esfuerzo común de todos de hacer llegar a la población el mensaje de que el agua regenerada en muchos casos es mejor que el agua que actualmente estamos bebiendo. Y ese es el mensaje que Veolia nos da. Nosotros estamos operando en todo el mundo este tipo de plantas para múltiples usos, y esa es nuestra visión. El problema no es en absoluto desde hace muchos años un problema técnico, es un problema de educación y de comunicación.
Gracias.
Bien, yo solamente decir que ha sido un placer, una satisfacción poder escucharle, y realmente muchas de las políticas que desde el área metropolitana se están llevando, de alguna forma las vemos reflejadas y ratificadas con lo que nos explica, tanto de lo que es la gestión integrada, de unificar lo que es abastecimiento y saneamiento, que ha sido una de las apuestas fuertes que se ha hecho desde el área metropolitana. Es evidente que para poder desarrollar correctamente todo lo que es agua regenerada es básico tener una gestión integrada. El tema tarifario también me ha supuesto una satisfacción, porque son cosas que se están haciendo aquí durante mucho tiempo. El tema de estos bloques, el tema incluso que se han modificado cambiando los bloques en función del número de personas que viven. Todo esto es básico dentro de esta política de gestión de la demanda, y que a veces hay gente que no va por esta línea y que incluso hablan de otros tipos de bloques que no van, que lo que pretenden es que sean mucho más baratos o más planos, con lo cual iría en contra de la demanda que tenemos. No hay que olvidar que Cataluña deja de ser un país con pocos recursos, no tan pocos afortunadamente como Namibia, pero sí con muy pocos recursos, con lo cual es básico esta política de precios.
Muchas gracias. Filip, ¿quieres decir alguna cosa?
Y simplemente que coincido con mis compañeros que no es un problema hoy de técnico, sino un problema más de percepción y de precio, y de ponerle un precio a este agua regenerada en nuestros casos, que a veces pues no tenemos definido. Y también un mensaje de que siempre nos acordamos de estas posibilidades cuando tenemos una sequía muy fuerte, y que ahora tenemos la suerte de tener agua, pero que preparemos un poco la guerra contra la próxima sequía mientras estemos tranquilos y lo podemos reflexionar y madurar tranquilamente, y no el día que ya se nos acabe el agua del grifo.
Gracias.
Bueno, finalmente pues también agradecer al ponente por su intervención. El CATS, como seguramente muchos conocen, es un consejo asesor del gobierno que depende del Departamento de la Presidencia. Tenemos la suerte de contar con Rafael Mujeriego como miembro de este consejo, y nuestra función básicamente es intentar anticiparnos. Nos trasladamos 15-20 años delante del gobierno para ver cuáles van a ser los retos que nuestro país va a afrontar en materia de desarrollo sostenible en el futuro, intentar definir la hoja de ruta para que el gobierno y el país pues puedan solucionarlos. Evidentemente el tema del agua es uno de los temas que centran nuestra atención, y también el tema vinculado al agua, pero también en otros ámbitos, el cambio climático. Somos responsables del informe periódico sobre el cambio climático en Cataluña. Estamos en la tercera edición, que va a salir a final de este año, con más de 150 investigadores trabajando en él, y el tema del agua también va a ser un tema clave. Muchos de vosotros habéis comentado que más que un tema técnico es un tema social, es un tema político, es un tema... Nuestra visión desde el Consejo es que la sostenibilidad también, como una parte, es más un tema de visión de compartir visiones plurales, pero también tenemos que intentar lograr pues, un cierto consenso sobre las políticas, sobre los objetivos a lograr, más que un tema técnico. Y aquí es donde estamos nosotros también, intentando hacer de puente entre gobierno, mundo académico, mundo empresarial y mundo social. Gracias por invitarnos a estar en la sesión.
Pues déjenme que haga unas brevísimas reflexiones antes de despedir a nuestro invitado. Hemos estado hablando de un producto de alta gama. Hemos estado dedicados toda la mañana a tratar de el no va más, que es la reutilización potable directa. Como han escuchado, regeneran agua, potabilizan agua por el método convencional, la mezclan en los depósitos en la ciudad en una proporción variable y es el agua que suministran a sus ciudadanos. Yo diría que es la nota cum laude. Pero querría que no nos salgamos de aquí con la idea de que todavía tenemos mucho para sacar sobresaliente. Tenemos ya un notable muy alto. En particular aquí en Cataluña tenemos instalaciones de la regeneración que él llama semipurificación. Ahí la terminología también es muy importante. Ese agua que utilizan para el riego sin restricción, lo que aquí o en el mundo anglosajón denominan la regeneración básica. Tenemos instalaciones emblemáticas, reconocidas en el mundo entero, desde el Consorcio de la Costa Brava, aquí en Barcelona, en Tarragona, el Buenaventura surgió con esas condiciones. De manera que no olviden que esa es una realidad. Una realidad todavía más impactante es que tenemos esas instalaciones que el señor Piet du Pisani nos estaba mostrando ya construidas. Las tenemos ahí en el área metropolitana, en el polígono El Pratense. Quizá el reto para sacar ese cum laude que yo les decía es que lleguemos a ese acuerdo entre todas las entidades responsables, salud pública, área metropolitana, compañías de agua, todo lo que llaman los anglos la industria y los reguladores del agua, para poder poner todo eso en movimiento. Y eso es deseable hacerlo. La Agencia Catalana del Agua, estaba viendo ahora a Jordi Molís, también antiguo alumno y gran responsable en este momento de abastecimiento y regeneración, porque entiende la agencia que forma parte del abastecimiento de recursos. Pues bien, decía, yo creo que el futuro pasa porque trabajemos juntos, demostremos, utilicemos las instalaciones para demostrar lo que son capaces de hacer y nos familiaricemos el público, los técnicos, los reguladores, para que sea, como dice Piet, non-issue, que no sea un tema ni siquiera de debate ni de discusión. Dicho eso, solo me queda que agradecerles de nuevo a todos ustedes, a los gestores de este magnífico centro. Hemos disfrutado de un pabellón deportivo, si se fijan también, el formato del techo es de un deportivo, el suelo es de una pista de jugar a deportes. Pues bien, agradecerle a todos los gestores de este magnífico centro, al CATS, a los socios patrocinadores y muy especialmente a nuestro conferenciante invitado, el señor Piet du Pisani, y a su esposa por haber compartido con nosotros estas 2 horas de estancia en Barcelona. Ahora solo me queda desearles que disfruten enormemente de su estancia en Barcelona, de sus vacaciones aquí, que tengan un regreso feliz y seguro a su país. Muchas gracias.